Spectrovision Radio.
Hello and welcome to the Modern Fairy Sightings podcast, where we listen to people's fairy encounters. But take heed, we're not talking about winged Tinkerbells here. These are real fairies, real encounters that took people like you and I by surprise. Stay a while and hear their stories. My name is Jo Hickey Hall, and I'm a folklore researcher. Dear listener, I'm recording this message a day after the winter solstice 2025, and here in the West Country I gathered with the Dabooni Druid Grove and friends for a solstice ritual at Stanton Drew Standing Stones. It felt very special to gather with like-minded souls at this point of the year and at this precipice for humanity. As I've said since I began the podcast 5 years ago, we have entered a liminal period which I like to refer to as the age of spiritual enlightenment. Seems like us Homo sapiens had some growing to do as a species, and as happens with all important transitions, what is rising to the surface at this time has dwelled in the depths for a very long time in our history. Now it is seeing the light of day, and it's up to us how we respond to that. Depending on where you're looking and where you're receiving your information, there is a lot of rising together. People and groups finding each other and supporting one another. As the systems holding up the old world continue to glitch and blur, as if we were waking from a dream, we begin to notice what is really around us, what is really of value, and how we want to live our lives going forward. Things seem to be gearing up for 2026 being a huge year of transition, and that is ever more reason to gather your energy at this time, doing the things that ground you and nourish you, taking decisions to be with the ones you love in a place that feels like home. I've said it before, but my friend and teacher, Martin Brofman, would ask if we can say the following: I love where I am, I love who I'm with, I love what I'm doing. And if you can't say that, then maybe you need to change something in your life or decide to change your mind about a situation. And if you can't change your mind about a situation, then maybe it is time to change something or move on from the way that you are currently living. I think that's a good philosophy to live by, and I think that it's something that many of us are doing en masse, in fact. Things are always easier when you make a move to make a change. Don't worry about how it's going to happen in a rational sense. That's not how the universe works, believe me. It always feels like you're stepping into the void and you're just going to fall, but you don't. You just put one foot in front of the other and head yourself in the direction in which you want to go towards, and trust and see what happens. I'm sending you all love and solstice blessings at this time. I played the part of the winter spirit at the solstice ceremony yesterday, and I wrote down some words which kind of came through, as they often do, which I will play at the end of this introduction. So this Solstice and Yule Special 2025 is a chat with Rod Williamson, host of Lodge Tales and friend of the show. He's also part of the Spectrovision podcast platform like myself. Lodge Tales is really one of my very favourite shows, and if you're not already subscribed to listen, then please seek out his link on the show notes. I'm in Rod's Patreon group too, so consider coming and joining us there to support. Lodge Tales shares real stories of the strange and paranormal firsthand from Native American and other indigenous personal experiences. It is a beautiful gathering of stories which might have remained unheard if not for Rod and the work he's doing. Most of all, I love to hear Rod and his guests discussing their relationship with otherworldly beings and how they kind of grew up together and how normal it was to know about these worlds. I guess a little like my ancestors in Ireland and the stories my dad would tell me. It was just a kind of normal thing. You were aware that these beings, these other places existed. And it's a way of being that we've largely lost in our modern Western society. But I like to think we are now doing our best to reconnect and resurrect that knowledge and wisdom. And Lodge Tales is doing a great job of teaching us and reminding us of these ways. A big thanks to Rod. I want to thank all the folks that have joined the Patreon recently. We've had some brilliant gatherings of late. In October, Ember in our group led a pathworking on Zoom for us to meet our familiar. It was just so expertly held and just blew our minds, to be honest. Many of us ended up having quite profound experiences. The recording is still available on Patreon for members, as are all the other Zoom chats and presentations we've shared. In November, previous guest Greg came to talk to us about Kundalini experiences, and we ran an experiential on that one too. Earlier this month, we held our annual ghost storytelling gathering online, which has always been a brilliant event for our Patreon group. It's always fun and interesting. I was so moved to hear people's stories this time. They weren't just ordinary ghost stories of the kind that you tend to hear. These contain beautiful examples of what happens when we reach out to these spirits. We use our humanity and we reach out to these worlds and we actually help them. And I was quite taken aback, as were many other members, to find that quite a number of us had experienced this and had been able to aid those who had crossed over. It's just amazing. The folk in this group are such a lovely bunch of wise, loving beings, and I'm very grateful for our community. If you would like to join and support, please find the membership link on the show notes to join the Curious Crew. I'd like to ask a big favour also, which would really help the show. If you are enjoying the Modern Fairy Sightings podcast, please share it with one other person whom you think might enjoy it. And if you can leave a rating also, and whichever app you're listening on, that would be so appreciated too. It all really helps. Recently, I released the first merch drop for Modern Fairy Sightings. The t-shirts are now available from T-Mill at the link on the show notes, and I'm delighted with how they've turned out. They feature the classic logo and are made in a sustainable factory with 100% organic cotton. The basic t-shirt shape has cute turnbacks on the sleeves and are really, really super comfy. The oversized design is also very cool. It's a luxurious kind of feeling, heavy weight cotton, which I found works really well over leggings for going up, hiking, etc. So head to T-Mill for those. The best way to support is, of course, joining us on Patreon, and it would be lovely to have you with us for January's online event, which is again run by one of our members, Helen, who will be, judging by the members' poll so far today, will be leading us in a guided visualization of one's own death as a transformative process. Helen is a meditation instructor and professionally trained death companion whose role is to support people through the various phases of the end-of-life process. I really love that we get these opportunities to share resources with one another, as we all have something to offer no matter what our life experience has been. So before I sign off for the last time in 2025, I want to thank all my amazing guests for sharing their stories this year and, in fact, over the last 5 years. In writing my book lately, which will hopefully be finished by February, I've been going back over all the stories and noticing how much we've learned along the way due to these shares. I know it's helped others with their research too. I want to thank my wonderful community on Patreon who are very dear to me and have formed a safe space where we can be ourselves, which is so important. And I also want to thank Daniel Noah and the team at Spectrevision who have kindly and wisely supported and encouraged me this year with the Modern Fairy Sightings podcast. I am very appreciative of all the careful holding of all our podcast family. Let's see what 2026 brings. As you know, in these shifting times, it helps to remain curious. Before we begin the episode, let's heed those words of the winter spirit. Stop still. Stop still. Stop still, beloved one. And feel my darkness wrap around you. Now is the time to rest and dream, cradled in the dark womb of winter. The land rests, my creatures sleep. To those who dare to seek, the darkness brings the brightest of knowing. What seeds of starlight lie within your sleeping bones? Hello everybody and welcome to the Modern Fairy Sightings podcast. I'm Jo Hickey Hall and this time I am delighted to have with me once again Rod from Lodge Tale. So welcome, Rod.
Oh, thanks. Appreciate being here.
Thanks for making some time today. And I know you're at work at the moment, so we've got your screen on. So yeah, how are things going there at the moment?
Well, it's going as good as can be. There's challenges, there's successes. It's just chugging along that life, I guess. It's kind of how it seems. Yeah.
I was kind of wondering around this time of year what sorts of traditions and practices there are that might relate to the winter solstice.
Well, in our community, I haven't, aside from different, just random ceremonies that happen, but nothing in particular that happens because of the winter solstice. I mean, when you think back in the old days, we're in up by Canada and we're right along the Rockies. So in the old days, really everybody on these northern plains would kind of hole up for the winter. Things would kind of slow down. And, November is like the approaching cold moon, then December is like the cold moon. January would be the help eat moon. So we're talking about it's so cold that you eat a lot of your rations that you've saved. So it's more of a time of people just kind of hunkering down, really, and getting through those really tough blizzards. And, there's not a lot of movement. That's kind of how it was. So I don't really remember growing up, even to this day, them having anybody having a ceremony just for that winter solstice. But there are things that happen in the winter time, like certain medicines get put to sleep, you know, like like the thunder will leave before the winter comes. The winter is the mark of, the thunder to head south. So we say that that's when the cold maker gets here. The cold maker is actually the raven. So when the ravens start showing up, we know that the thunder should be gone, and those thunder type ceremonies get put to sleep too until next spring, until the first thunder. Then they get opened back up. So and then the same with animals that, like hibernate and stuff, like the bear. You won't have any bear type ceremonies or medicine happening in the winter. That all gets put to sleep too. Because, the bears hibernate. Like if you use that medicine or you're calling on them, those spirits, they get angry, they get mad. What are you doing? We're sleeping. Go away.
that's such a message also for all of us because I mean I just find it's so jarring this time of year when people are expected to sort of make long trips and go to lots of do's. We have sort of Christmas parties and things like that. And there's so much that stacks up to do. And for me, I mean, just more and more, it's driving me nuts. I just want to rest. This is the time of rest. And I think more and more people are really feeling that too, that no, this is the bit where you quieten down, you go inside. And I'm thinking about how if the community, slows down and gathers together where you are, whether this is then a time for families to be together and for those stories to be passed, among the generations. Does it turn out like that?
Definitely, yeah. There are more tribes too that they can only start telling their stories when there's snow on the ground. And there's some tribe, I don't remember which one it is, Arikara, Mandan, Hidatsa, one of them. They can't tell certain stories until a certain river freezes over too in the winter time. And so, yeah, it is a time in general. You could look at it as a broad view that a lot of stories start getting told when it's winter time. You know, in our tribe, it's not really like that. I mean, at least I haven't really seen it like that. But again, I don't know everything about the ceremonies. I just know a small bit, but that's more than the average, I guess. But it's not like I'm some, know every ceremony in and out. I don't, but I've just never heard of it like that.
Mm. So what type of stories are then released, I guess, or given permission to be told at this time? Is there like a different quality to the stories that are told than are told at other times of year?
Well, from what I understand it from these other tribes, it's there's certain creation stories that are only told in these certain times. It might be the creation story of a certain medicine, or that's like the origin of those origin type stories, or even their creation stories of how they came to be. From what I understand, there's certain one, that certain tribes can't tell them until snow on the ground. I know the Dinè people, they're like that. They don't tell any sort of ghost stories, paranormal type stories until it's winter time. Traditionally, that's when they're supposed to tell them. And why that reason is, I really don't know. It's just something that they do, yeah.
That really fits though, doesn't it? Because obviously, I mean, for the original, the old ways would have been that Samhain was, the end of the year. Um, you're starting to move into the darkness, which at Samhain is, what's commonly known as Halloween. Um, and then when you get to winter solstice, it is like well, we know it is a creation story, don't we? In the kind of Christian tradition, this is when the light is born again, the sun is born again. And of course, the SON, meaning also the SUN at winter
Mhm.
solstice, where the sun will return and begins to get brighter and brighter. So it makes absolute sense, doesn't it, for the creation stories to be told at that time? That's really amazing to hear that.
I mean, some of these stories, when they're told, they'll take like 4 or 5 days. So wintertime was really a time where a lot of these stories were told, but like it just depends on the family. Like I've heard of people say, yeah, well, when I was a little girl growing up, I'm thinking about this old lady. She said, my grandparents would tell us stories like every time before bed or in the evening times, they would always get some sort of story they were always being told, even if it was the same one over. It kind of helps to set that story in their minds and pass on the knowledge and what's happened with these. But with stories, they're really powerful. I don't think people realize the power of them because folks will say, "Oh, it's Blackfoot mythology." It's like, you know what? It's not mythology. I don't know why we gotta brand it like that, but we don't. That's almost offensive to us because it's not like that. It's history. we're talking about the history of these things that happened, and it's frankly not our fault that y'all don't believe in spirits to the ones that don't. It's just these are the things that happen with these spirits, and this is why we tell these stories and we keep them going. Like, why did we get a certain medicine? Like, how did that happen? What is that medicine? How does it work? And so to understand all that on a deeper level, then you realize that hey, these things like happened. This otter turned into a man and spoke to this guy. This beaver really did seduce that man's wife and use medicine to take her under the water and not wanting to give her back. These things have happened. These spirits have done that. So that's what I'm saying. Like, because growing up, hearing these stories, I kept thinking, why do we have so many stories of animals talking? What is that? Like, why? Because you're just a kid and that's the last thing you're thinking of. I was thinking of building the biggest jump I could take on my BMX bike and competing with my friends. I wasn't thinking about ceremonies and things like that. So later on, I started realizing, oh, wait a minute, you know, especially the time when I very first heard, uh, I don't know how to say this, an eagle spirit speaking Blackfeet. When I first heard that inside of a sweat lodge, it just changed something in me. Like it made me realize, well, these stories are true. I'm having this experience that's backing all of this up. And I can't, you know, not believe my senses. I'm hearing this. This is real. This is happening. And when that does happen, it changes something in you. And you just kind of like put your head down and get solemn. You're just thankful for even being there while this is happening. That's how I felt, anyways.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it is that way for people when they have these experiences. You know, beforehand, growing up in kind of in Britain, you you're socialized to believe that that is all separate, that the legends of your indigenous people, wherever you're from, Ireland for me, those are stuff of legends, when actually there is so much there. And people are learning this now. People know this now. You know, there's a lot of work being done with this, that it is part and parcel of who we are. I think it runs really deep, and that it's not separate. You know, that's the whole kind of the Age of Enlightenment did a whole number on us, basically, did a number on the world, as well as colonialism, obviously, and just removed our capacity to hold both. You know, to understand that the stories themselves are alive and alive within us, and so yes, it is a surprise when people do have these experiences and realize that the world is not how they've been socialized and educated to believe it is. But I think this is something that's changing. I do see it in my guests. So, you know, I can see something good happening. But when you're talking about the medicine, some of us in Britain anyway won't be familiar with sacred medicine bundles and medicine generally. Are you able to describe, you know, what that's about to listeners?
Yeah, well, there's three types of medicine. There's the physical kind, which we can all do. We don't need any special right to that. We can all go out and, like say I'm trying to get antibiotics, then I go up to these trees and I say a prayer, and I offer tobacco to that specific plant, its life force, its spirit. I'm thanking it for being there, thanking it for being in my life, and I'm asking it for help. I need help to get us healthy again. And I just simply lay my offering down and I gather it. That's as intense as it gets. It's just a quick prayer and an offering, and anybody can do that. We don't need a right for that. Anybody can do that. It don't have to be tobacco. That's what I prefer to offer spirits is tobacco. They like it. So that's what I offer. But it could be anything. Anything you could just set down. It's just a transfer of energy is what you're doing. So you're offering something for that whole process. But anyways, The second type of medicine will be the physical, but there'll also be a spirit attached with it. So not only is your body getting physically doctored, but spiritually at the same time. There's a certain spirit that'll come with whoever makes that medicine for you. In our tribe, I've always seen it be a root medicine of some kind, something you drink. So you would keep that in a certain way, to keep it safe, I guess as you could say. You don't argue around it, you don't yell around by it, you don't play too rambunctious. You always kind of got to be solemn around it. Imagine a little baby. You're not gonna carry around and jump around like that if there's a baby in the house laying on the couch or something. You're not going to. You're gonna, really kind of be mild mannered. And
Yeah.
that's how you got to be around that because there's spirit with it. So you don't raise too much cane around them. So and then there's the third kind that's just straight spiritual, and that kind is what I've heard. Well, what I gather people would call miracles. That type of healing is like a miracle healing, and in the past, where there's a big difference between, say, Catholicism. In the past, when these human beings have had these gifts in their way, they've had these spiritual type gifts of that third type of medicine, and they would do these miracles. They would be considered saints, and they would somehow get them into sainthood. All agree that this here was a saint. Well, in our way, we don't do that. We don't put our, and I'm not knocking anybody. I'm pointing out a difference here in how I see it. Right, is that we don't put our holy people on a pedestal like that. We don't recognize them like that because they'll be the first ones to tell you that, hey, none of this is me. This is all the creator doing this. This is not me. I'm just a tool,
Yeah.
for him to work through it. It ain't me. And they'll be the first ones to say that. So there's this huge humility that comes with being that powerful to be able to, that holy, that you can actually heal people through this life force from the creator that comes through you. And that's the reason why you have to have rights, because think of it like electricity, and your body is the wire that the electricity travels through. If you don't have any of these rights, you just got a normal little cable, a little speaker wire cable. Well, if you're trying to heal like that, that cable, because of the amount of power of life force coming through you at the time, has to be a thicker gauge in order for that to work, or you could be harmed. You could, in cases of being harmed, or people will lose their mind. Your family will be harmed. There will just be this bad luck, this mistake that happens because you don't have the rights to that, and you're not. Because the old ways are about balance and transformation. So we say your spirit is not transformed into something more that can handle that. It's just this human, and it'll get harmed. It'll get burnt out. Something will happen. And so that's what medicine is, and it's life force. And we talk about, oh, that was a powerful old man. Did you see how he doctored them people? And us little boys, teenagers, like, yeah, you seen that?
Mm.
We'll talk like that. And when we're talking about is the life force that flows through them, there's a lot. That's what power is in our way. It's not this political type power, nothing like that. It's just referring to how much life force flows through that person.
Thank you. And the medicine bundles, can you talk a little about the medicine bundles that might belong to a community?
Yeah, so those are they all have their origin stories, and there are many versions of origin stories of, say, the same thing. They all basically tell the same story, though. There are like little differences between the tribes. There's huge differences within your tribe. Different bands, they'll have minute differences, right? And so, really, what they are is a specific animal or elemental, or even like, I guess, people, loosely, even people. They give control of their life force. There's something happened usually in the past where, and this is the part where I even like just accept it because there's no figuring it out. Like, how does this happen? But by and by, the creator has his own ways. He has his own agenda, and he decides to give medicine to a certain group of people for whatever reason. It's between them people and him why he's done that. Because he sees something going on with these people, whichever group you're talking about, that he wants to help, and he'll do it in different ways. And one of the ways is how I always look at it is being blessed with these bundles, because these bundles they come from different, not the creator per se. We do have two bundles that have come directly from the creator in my band of Blackfeet, but all the other ones haven't come from him directly. But they are his helpers. I don't know how else to say it. It's equivalent, not equivalent, a loose equivalency to like the whole concept of angels, his helpers, to do his work and here and there. But that's kind of how it is. These good spirits that work with the creator, they will give control of their life force and put it in these bundles. So when that happens, your people all of a sudden have this means to survive and to succeed. And whatever happens, you'll always have that blessing from the creator right there with you to help. And there's a lot in there that it does. There's a lot that different medicine, different bundles do. There's a lot in there, but in the old days there was a lot of war medicine in there. So like, say a group is going out and they're going to go raid horses. Well, before they get to the encampment they're going to raid horses from, one of the guys' medicine, part of his war medicine, is to bring in fog. So the fog rolls in, and then, or there might be a time when it's at night, and with that nighttime too, because that's when they usually raided. But within that nighttime too, they can make it windy, like so windy that you can't hear them coming in there. Things like that. Or when they do run away, they got their raid, and then they're going back to the encampment, their home, and then they'll all of a sudden make it really storm right behind them, just pouring rain, so they could get away. That was kind of like war medicine, or a way to protect you. Like there'll be things where you can't be hit by an arrow, you can't be hit by a musket round or a bullet. It'll go through your shirt, but that's it. There'll only be a hole in your shirt. There will be no hole in you.
Mm.
There was a lot like that, or some of the war type medicine that comes from the bears is really really vicious, like really vicious.
Right.
Like those warriors, those bear warriors, they fought with a knife and with a spear that they were given by the bear, and when they would fight, they would fight until there was nothing left alive. That's how they fought, because that's how the bear fights, and that's how you need to be is like them. And they did a lot of screaming, like how bears do. They would scream before they went in, and usually those were war chiefs. A lot of these people that had bear medicine were war chiefs, and they would lead the Blackfeet in. And part of that medicine, for it to work, is you can't show cowardness. You gotta only be brave like those bears are. When they really after something, you gotta be like that, and then it works. All part of it. Because with medicine comes a lot of restrictions. There's things you gotta live by, like people that say have that beaver medicine. You can't just go knock on their door. You can't knock on their door. You have to stand outside until they notice you. And when they notice you, they'll let you in. You can't knock. So however long you gotta stand there is however long you gotta stand there. And that's kind of how a lot of this works. There's restrictions to it, like with that bear medicine. It's asleep in the winter. You can't use it then. Things like that.
Mm. Wow.
I
Yeah.
hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it really does. That's really helpful to know. As you're describing those kind of gifts and those means of battle, um, it really reminds me of the medieval Irish tales, actually, which are very, very old and originally from an oral tradition. But some of the gods and beings in those tales, fairy beings, otherworldly beings, they were able to summon, the winds. They are able to, use the seas and battles and things like this, and had their own special ways of going into a kind of like a war frenzy, like a warp sort of frenzy, in order to battle. So, there's common elements here that, as I say, we've forgotten, and thankfully you've been able to hold on to, which, now we're able to kind of learn from from those stories that do remain and from those practices which do remain. And hopefully we'll be able to build up our sense of things again, and our meaning for life in these ways, because it's a much richer way of being in the world, and I believe our original way of being in the world, before the framework which we now, live with, was kind of applied over us as humanity. But anyway, that's another thing altogether. I wanted to also ask you about certain beings, because last time we talked about the owls that came, and the little people, and we also talked about one of the water beings that had pulled your cousin down, which sounds really scary and very like some of the stories that we hear here too. I wondered what your understanding was around the more sort of shadowy type characters, that, well, the shadow people, dark men, hat men. I've been interviewing people for a while now that have been talking about coming into contact with the dark man and the hat man, and these kind of trickster type characters. So, and I know those are all, they're not all the same thing, but I wondered what your sense of those sorts of beings are.
Like those shadow people, there's a lot of them that ain't even bad. That's just how they present. They look like a shadow. They're just a wandering spirit, whatever. They're those ones that you might see, but they never ever bother you, like ever. And it's almost a mistake that you've seen them.
Mm.
And then you have those ones that use that to hide. They want to hide in these places. Like I'm talking under a shoe. Um, any place where there isn't any light, they could kind of use that to remain hidden so that they could come back and bother you when you're asleep, or when you're least suspecting, or anything like that, to get that response out of you, that fear, so they could absorb it. They can eat. That's what they eat, that kind of energy that you let off. They can nourish themselves on it. So they'll keep coming back, they'll keep coming back for that. And if you have something to get rid of them, then you can kind of, make them think twice about coming after you or trying to scare you, or anything like that. Now, that hat man, he comes around when, and he might look different to folks, but the one thing in common is he always has this hat. He likes to come around when people are suffering. He's attracted to that suffering. So you could be, say you're going through a really bad divorce, there's child custody involved, you're at your lowest point in your life. Things are really changing in your life, and there's suffering because of that. He'll come around for, times like that, or if there's just anything really to think about how you're suffering. A lot of it is depression. That's a really horrible form of suffering, I think. It's a debilitating thing. So those are some of the times that he'll show up, and it's the same thing. It's to scare you, to get that, to feed off of you, to feed off of your energy. Same thing, but that's kind of the difference I noticed between them two, is that Hat Man only comes around when there's a lot of suffering, and rarely do people see him when they're awake. It happens, but he's normally not one of those. He usually comes in your dreams, or paralyzes you, and comes into your room like that. And tries to scare you. It doesn't do anything, just stands there, just in all of his glorious horror,
Mm.
trying to, get this feeling from you. And, eventually you move and he's not there anymore. You know, I haven't heard of him really touching people. Like
No.
some of those dark entities, they'll push you into a furnace, try to hurt you, push you down the stairs, something like that. This one, I don't ever hear of him doing that too much. But the things I do know is he's always around suffering, whereas the shadow people just random. Can look any way too, look like big trash bags. Not necessarily do they look like biped people, they look like just odd things too.
Mm. Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I can say that the guests that I've spoken to, um, they have they have been in a place of suffering when they have seen the Hat Man, and it seems like a different being than the Dark Man, which maybe I don't know whether how that translates over there, and in your community. Um, the Dark Man often he's definitely in the kind of the Irish folklore, and people will happen upon him, and he kind of often he'll set down a challenge of some kind that if you can move through it, you can really move through something, in your life. It's like it's an initiation type situation. Now, if that isn't present in your culture, then that's quite interesting in itself, because the initiation is something, or at least formal initiation, is something that's missing from modern Western society. And so is the dark man, is he providing a means for that to take place in effect, which, to be honest, I believe a lot of the encounters with otherworld are, you know, um, often kind of initiation processes by which somebody can pass through, even perhaps pass through suffering actually, but come through something and be transformed in the process. Does that kind of translate it to your understanding, or is it something different?
well, that type of what you're talking about is not necessarily a dark man, but there's an animal out there that does that. Um, Quite a few of them actually that do the same thing. But so when I was really small, I was at the Blackfeet boarding dorm. This was after my grandma had passed away. My folks went crazy. They were drinking, and my grandpa was kind of closed off to everybody. So I was kind of forgotten about in this boarding school. You go there during the week, but you go home on the weekends, and it's all geared toward, just kids, entertaining the kids basically, letting us watch movies and giving us a little structure to our lives, things like that. Because the weekends you go home, you might not eat that whole weekend unless you could find, one set of parents that ain't drunk and they're willing to feed a whole handful of kids. So you just kind of go house to house. It was a time like that. And there was this little kid down there. He had these braces on his legs because he couldn't walk right. There was something wrong with him how he was born. And one day there was fresh snow just hit everywhere, and we were riding back on the bus after school. We looked up on that hill where that water tower was that you pass when you go down the hill. You can see up there on that side, and it was leaking, so there was a whole sheet of ice up there plus snow. It was like the perfect sliding hill, and you had to walk a ways to get up there. It took you a while, about maybe 45 minutes roughly to get all the way up to that place from where you leave the dorm. And because you got to trek up this hill and then you got to go through these fences and kind of walk across some open terrain. Then you finally get to the hill and you got to climb that. So it's kind of a trek especially for little kids. But one time, I was helping this kid. Everybody got too excited because they knew what they seen on the way in from the bus, and they all just left him. And I don't know where the matrons were. The matrons normally help him, but I was one of the last ones getting out there, and I seen him really struggling, trying to hurry. He kept looking up like he was missing all the kids, so I stopped. Here, I'll help you, and I got all his stuff on his shoulder what to do. He'll put this here, put that there. And we got him all fixed up in his snowsuit and everything, and so we start walking out, and I have one sled. I was just gonna sled with him because I didn't want him to be alone. So I started walking with him, and then this storm that comes, we call it Makepi, or taking the orderly position for an attack, I guess it could be translated to. And it's just this really blinding storm that comes, and we got caught in it. I mean, it's so bad you can't even see. Like, if your hand was stretched out, you can't see the end of your fingertips. It's that bad. And we're walking, and we get caught in this after a while. We're about, oh geez, a third of the way, 2/3 of the way there. Not too not too close to this place. So, anyways, as that happens, I start panicking, and because I don't really know what to do. So I stop, and I'm holding that sled, I'm laying on it, and I get my little buddy next to me, and I'm just laying on it. I don't want that sled to blow off, and I start realizing that we're getting buried.
Oh,
And it's really loud. It's like so loud, and your face is getting stung. So we're trying to like keep our faces out of the snow, and we're laying with our backs to the snow, and we're getting buried. I'm watching us getting buried. It's happening that fast, and because it's a huge, massive blizzard. Well, anyways, I start moving. I'm hollering at him like, we got to stand up. Like, we have to stand up. And so we stood up. I got him to move, and I helped him. I had to push him up. And then I stood up, and I said, now, I was trying to like sign to him too at the same time because it was really hard yelling. I said, now we lay down, but we put this sled to our back. I was trying to convey that to him. He understood just to lay down, and then I laid on the other side of him, and I'm holding this sled trying to block that snow. I'm hoping it could just blow over us, not bury us as fast.
mm.
And that sled just gets ripped out of my hands. I don't know what caught it, but it's just gone. And so I stand back up, I get on my knees, and I finally get to my feet, and I'm pulling him up. And I don't know which direction we were going. I have no idea which way is which, and I'm worried. So I just pick a direction and I start going. I figure, well, just going anywhere is better than just staying here. Or I don't know what's going to happen. So I start trying to get back to the dorm with him, and I have my hand out because I don't want to run into anything. I don't want to be a tree or something. I have my hand out and my head down, and I'm holding Kyle's hand, and I'm kind of pulling him, holding his glove, and we're trying to get back, and all of a sudden I feel something on my hand. I thought, did we get into the brush line? Like, what's here? And I kind of pick my head up far enough that I'm willing to. It's getting stung by that snow, and I look, and it's not a tree. It's like fur. It's like hide. I don't know. And I kind of left my hand on it, but I put my head down, and I just got still. And I'm thinking, what what do I do? Like, what kind of animal is this? And I'm too scared to even move. And all of a sudden, I feel it moving. So I don't know why, but I just started walking with it with my hand on it. And every now and again, I'd get a better glance, and I seen it had split hoofs. Then it was the color. It was the color of an elk. That was an elk. And I'm walking. I'm walking with an elk. It starts dawning on me like I'm, I'm walking with this, and I keep my hand on it, on its flank, on its side, kind of up by its belly, really, just a little off its flank, and that's where I'm walking with it. And I can't see its head. It's too much of a blizzard, and it moves. I could feel a direction change. We're changing. We're going somewhere else, and I started getting worried because I thought I was going like to the dorm, and I'm thinking, oh geez, where is it gonna lead me? And should I let go? Should I just run that way? But I stuck with it, and all of a sudden I hear this screaming. I can't make out what it's saying, but I could hear a man's voice screaming. and we're going toward that. And before long, I put my hand down because I don't feel it anymore. It walked away. Like it just walked away, and I'm going toward that screaming. And it was my matron yelling for the kids, and we made it back. We
Oh,
made it back to the dorm. And so later on in my life, I started learning about, you know, what kind of medicine do these spirits have? And one that the elk has is it has the ability to clear obstacles from your path in your life. Why is that? Well, because when they're out in nature and it's really thick brush, they just put their heads down and with their antlers and they just plow themselves a trail and they get right through that really thick brush. So they have that they pass to you, right? And so this is one of those that I think you're somewhat on par with what you were saying.
that's
But these
amazing.
animals have this same thing, and like buffalo too. They they're not afraid of a lot of things. They're all about success, you know, and moving forward. So they the lesson we learn from them, all a part of their medicine too, is that if there's a really hard time in your life, you go right through it. You don't go around it. You face it head on and you handle it. As a blizzard's coming, that's what they do. They face into the blizzard and they walk through it because they know it's less time they'll have to spend in the blizzard if they pass through it. So we learn that from them too. But it's kind of like the same. There are animals that have that thing you're talking about, that kind of initiation or that help you further along. You know, maybe even like broaden your understanding of things too, I guess.
Wow, that is absolutely that is so powerful, absolutely wonderful. And I mean, I guess for you also, you learn to trust it too, because at one point you're thinking, oh, is this should I just go the way I think it's going to? And then you're carrying on, and it does lead you to safety. So it just really then kind of further ingrains the knowledge and the awareness that yes, these worlds do exist. Yes, they will reach out and help if you ask them for help and you need help, and you just need to trust it. And that's absolutely amazing. Wow. And did the other kids get back safely too?
Yeah, all the other kids, what they did was they all when they were talking about it, like, man, we almost froze up there. All we could do is lay down. And I like
Right.
thinking to myself, man, I was getting buried. Like, wonder if they were. I don't remember asking and I don't remember what they said, but they said they all laid down and
Mm.
they waited for the storm to stop because that storm used to come all the time. I don't remember it coming as much these days. The world is changing, but
Mm.
I remember when we were kids, it was this total whiteout. You couldn't see anything, but it only lasted like I remember like hour to 3 hours max every time it came. It wasn't this really long, day long type storm. It was just this sudden assault and then it was gone. And after it was gone, I remember a time too when the sky turned so blue and the sun was so bright that the whole landscape just looked like a sheet of paper. It was a whiteout, a legitimate whiteout. You couldn't tell depth. If you're driving on a road through a lot of hills, there's a chance you could fall off of that hill. You'd drive
Wow.
right off it. It was so it was so blinding with that snow. It's the first time I've ever seen something like that. The time I've seen it was with my grandpa, and he was trying to get to town. We had to go through it, and the only way we could get through these hills was to lessen for gravel on the side of the road and that would keep us going. We couldn't tell where we was at. There was no depth perception whatsoever.
The not being able to see where you're going is it's terrifying. The only thing I can compare to that is often the mist will rise here very quickly down in the West Country in England, and sometimes when I've driven back from Glastonbury to Bristol, the fog is so thick and rises so quickly that sorry, fog rather than mist, you can't see. You're driving along and you just can't see anything in front of you. You can just see the fog. And so you've just got to go as slow as possible, you know, because you can see that you are still on the road, but you can't really see further ahead, sort of thing. And yeah, you have to keep the faith and try not to panic. But wow, yeah, thank you for sharing that. That's a really amazing story. You talked about your friends that you went to boarding school with, and I wondered whether young people there now in your community, are they becoming more interested in these older tales? Because I know for us over here, the folklore has become really huge topic that a lot of people are interested in. And any podcasts to do with folklore and books and, films, folklore and folk horror, it's become absolutely massive. There's a real hunger for it. People are turning to the old ways. People are rediscovering the traditions of the older traditions of where they live. Do you have a similar kind of shift going on in your community too?
Yeah, there's a language revival kind of going on in my tribe. After the Catholic schools, the residential schools, the language almost it took a big hit because the elders, okay, the parents of the kids that went in, they were afraid to teach them the language because of all the repercussions that were going on and that were happening. They were afraid to encourage that way. So the kids that were in there come out feeling the same. Because the parents would go to jail if their kids weren't sent to these schools. They would go to jail for that. And these were like stockades, things like that.
Mm.
So my grandpa and them, they were hesitant to teach my dad and my aunts. I had one aunt that wasn't raised by that old lady, our great grandma, his mom. And this was after all of the boarding school, they didn't, that was kind of over for the most part. But she taught my other two aunts how to speak. That's all she spoke, so they were fluent with it, whereas my dad and my aunt weren't. So there was this gap in there. And then you get to my generation, and where we know more than like my dad and them knew, and then the generation beneath me knows more than I know about the language, and it's coming back. But as far as like the old stories and things, they've always been there, and not all the time do the household, any given house on the res know these old stories because not everybody is traditional. There's still a lot of Catholics. There's even Christians that follow just straight, they don't mix the traditional with this newer stuff. And that's how kind of a lot of them are. But when the stories start getting told, the kids, I see a lot of interest from the kids. They're around, but it's not the same interest that we have. We have a fascination when we're older, like we think about these deeper meanings of these stories, whereas these kids are just like, oh, good story, let's go play.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
it's about as deep as they go with it. But anyways, I mean, as far as interest, I guess I see it generally more, and I think it's just because more people are encouraging, I guess, more kids to get involved. So our children's society at our one of our ceremonies, I mean, this society's everywhere, but in particular, when I see it at this one ceremony, I see that the children are getting more and more. There's more and more kids that are becoming members of that society, the Chickadee Society. That's where all the kids learn the protocol, and they do things like they police trash around the camp. There ain't a lot of it, but they'll go and do that. They'll put down the pathway for the woman that sits holy to come out of the center lodge and go into the next. They all line that pathway, those little kids, and that holy woman walks through them. So I mean, they learn protocols at a really young age in that society, and I'm seeing more and more do that. And then the societies above that, I mean, I see 20, mid 20-year-old kids, young 20s too, like they know so much. They like the amount that they know already at their age would be way more than say my father ever knew.
Wow.
You know, and even me, they know way more than me. And I'm just so proud of them when I see that. And I find myself, see, because in our way, an elder, it doesn't mean you're old. No, that just means you're elderly. An elder is someone who is passing knowledge of ceremony and sacred ways, like keepers of that knowledge. Those are elders. And your elder could be, like I said, a 22-year-old kid. And, where our age we're at now, then that they're the ones teaching you.
Yeah.
So elder is a relative term, really, you know. But when I see that, it makes me really proud because that's all my elders wanted. They wanted us to take what they were showing us and pass it on, and to realize that in some pockets here and there are kids that know way more already. It's just makes me happy. I don't know how else to say it. There's only like 20,000 of us Blackfeet left in my band. That's and compare that to the world. Of course, you're going to be happy when you see your ways continuing. Yeah.
Oh, it's so good to hear. I love that, and it makes me really happy too. I feel like it's a kind of a groundswell of change, great change in the world, and I know I'm certainly feeling it. I know a lot of people are feeling it, and these young people that have come into the world are just incredible. Like they are leading the way. I've been feeling that for a while, and I'm glad to hear that. That it seems to be present in your community too. There's something very special happening. We're in a really tricky period of humanity right now, but I'm really feeling positive for the future because of that kind of groundswell you know, of people yearning to do things differently, remembering who they are, where they've come from, what they're here to do, and stepping into those roles in society that are so badly needed, and leading us forward. So I join I join your absolute joy at witnessing that. It's very special. So, one of the things I wanted to ask you was you had on your podcast, which, and I forgot to say this at the beginning, so I will say it now. If you don't already listen to Lodge Tales, you really have to. If you like Modern Fairy Sightings podcast, you are going to love Lodge Tales because it's just chock full of people who have all of these stories to tell firsthand, and it's just wonderful. And also, you have a Patreon too, so people need to sign up there and join the community there. I'm in there, and lots of other people too. Loads of the people in my group are actually patrons of yours too, Rod. So and one of the things that I really enjoyed listening to were the encounters of people meeting centaurs, horsemen. There's the horsemen, and the other being that I'd like to ask you about is the tree men, or the kind of stick men. I've spoken to a number of people who've seen these beings. Yeah, what's your take on them, the tree beings? I've seen a tree being myself. I saw it run down a beach at twilight, probably it's got to be about 12 years ago. No, more than that, 13, 14 maybe years ago. And I was with two other people, so I wasn't the only person to see it. There were two other people that watched it. It happened at twilight. It ran down a beach. So I know these beings exist, and it was only when I was talking to somebody who was a guest on my show that I was amazed to hear him start to describe something that sounded very like what I had seen. So since then, I've heard of some other experiences that people had with these beings. So I know they're in Jersey, where I'm from. I know they're in the UK. I've spoken to a man in Brazil who saw a tree man, literally like the trunk of a tree, it changed from a man to a trunk and back again, and it was walking down the road. And he also saw that with somebody else. They both saw it. So, yeah, do you know of any stories like that?
These stick people, they're again like when you realize that every natural thing in the universe has a life force, a lot of these things ain't too surprising. They- They're more like, oh, okay, that's, one of those spirits from those trees. It's just, one of those things. And sometimes, see, there's this understanding too. A lot of times I think I failed to kind of explain a little more because we all have this understanding amongst myself and a lot of people I speak to that spirits can show up any way they want. They don't have to, they're not stuck showing up just one way. They can appear to whatever makes sense to you,
Mm.
or however you understand. I mean, they can do that. So a lot of these spirits, they they can change their shape, their form. They can look like men, but they won't always look like men. They can't quite pull it off all the way. You'll see features of them that resemble what they really are. And but they can do that. They can make themselves. And now, why do they do it? I have no idea. Like, why are they even deciding to show themselves to us? Or is it just them traveling and we happen to notice them? I mean, I have no idea why they do it, but I know they're there. I mean, every blade of grass has a life force to it. Every tree, every river, every mountain, every star in our universe, everything has a spirit to it. So these things are, but they are curious, right? Because you don't normally see things like that. And the time I seen one of those stick people, I don't know if I told you about that when I was in Shema Indian school. And anyways, the one I seen, we were up late, uh, smoking cigarettes out the window. It's these windows that you have to turn a latch and then push the bottom outward. And they're like just like a vent type window. Like you can't crawl out of them. They're designed like that so the students won't run away and raise Cain all night or whatever. But we're smoking cigarettes out that, and our windows face these woods. And there's a dirt road with an outside light out there along that dirt road. And then it turns into this wet area. Then right above that is a bunch of woods. And across, if you keep going past those woods, there's like a highway up there. And I remember somewhere in that field past that highway, there was these beacons, these red beacons, and we'd see them flash. And we are just visiting and smoking that cigarette. We were sharing one, and uh, I was just staring at nothing, and it happened to be one of those beacons I was looking at, and it started doing weird things. It started moving, like as it was moving in ways I never noticed it before. Normally, it's just this flash. Here, it looked like more like somebody was turning a light around, like rotating a light. Like, I don't know, it looked funny. And I told my buddy, I said, "Hey, look at that." And he's like, "What, that beacon?" I said, "Well, no, I don't know." And I kind of described, and he finally found out what I was, trying to get his attention for. And we were both staring at this red light, and all of a sudden there was two. Like it was like, imagine something with red eyes that were glowing turned its head and looked right at you.
Mm.
That's how it looked. And there was two of them side by side. And we're staring at this thing, and then we can see like it fade out and fade back in. And like, is that blinking? Like blinking eyes? What is that? We were just staring at it, and finally it started moving. It was like moving kind of closer to us, but we were just staring at it, and we could see enough by that light when it put its leg out, kind of into the light a little bit. I could see its leg. It was just a straight up stick. Think Groot from the Marvel movies. It kind of looked like that. Like that, I could tell. I couldn't make out a lot of features, but its head didn't look like square like Gumby. It didn't look like that. It looked round, kind of roundish looking. But that's all I remember is seeing its leg. And when we noticed that leg, we kind of flinched. Like, you see that? I say, "Its leg." I said, "Yeah, yeah, its leg." And it just simply pulled its leg back in and like slunk back into the darkness. we could see those eyes like turn away from us, like it turned its head because we couldn't see him anymore, and it was gone. But
Mm.
that was the only time I ever seen something like that. Because we don't have those in our tribe. These other tribes have stories of what they call stick Indians, and that's the first time I ever seen one. Like I never knew what they were. Yeah, as far as that other man you're talking about, that that horseman.
Oh, yeah.
You know, there's so many stories of these men type creatures. There's a horseman, there's a bull man or a minotaur, there's a lizard man, a goat man. There's so many of these types of men. There's even a bunny man, believe it or not.
Yeah.
Story of that. But so all of these different. Okay, so how I make sense of it, because I've never heard an elder speak specifically on these things, is we have this old story of the Wolf Trail. The Wolf Trail is what we refer to as the Milky Way. That's the Wolf Trail. There's a story about that trail and what happens when we pass away and why that's so important to us. But within that story, a number of things happened, and there was this one particular event that happened that was a mistake. It was come to find out it was a mistake where the wolves that taught us how to hunt, how to protect ourselves, like in war, things like that. That those wolves, those spirits that taught our people that and gave us the first painted lodges, also told us about the Milky Way or the Wolf Trail and where to direct our prayers, and that we have to follow that when we pass to get to that future world. That's part of our journey. When you pass, you're going to have to go up along that. Well, within that story, the wolves helped the people, and they made themselves look like people, but you could tell they weren't fully. And they would also wear a hide of what they were, like a gray wolf pelt would be that gray wolf. That black wolf would be, the black wolf pelt that he'd be wearing. And so they liked the people a lot. They really liked the people. They liked interacting with them. They liked them. So some of those sons stayed after that winter. See, this whole winter, those predators that were up there, Wolverine, skunk, badger, all the wolves, all of these were helping these people, and they were giving them medicine and stuff. And when spring came and all the predators broke off out of their winter camp, those spirits broke their winter camp and they were leaving to go back to their people, wherever they were at. Some of those sons wanted to stay, and they were still in human form as spirits. And they started mating with people. They started having babies. It went wrong. Like that was one of the things. Like in the Bible, they have the Nephilim. Well,
Yeah.
that happened to us, but it was with the animals. The animals that happened, and they had to do away with that. They had to correct those wrongs and quit doing that because it was starting to have implications on the people. And what those are, I don't know. I haven't heard any more of that story of what really went down, other than there was a stop put to it. And so today you have all of these men type stories. Snake Man, like I said, it goes on and on. There's even a Batman story. I mean, there's so many of these type men stories. So I draw it all back to that time when those spirits and those people made a mistake, and we're still living with those today, whatever they are. That's what I kind of think about that. And same with any of those horsemen, but the stories I've heard of them is depending on where they come from, they'll have different paint on them. And the Dinè people, the Navajo Nation, that's what Dinè. They don't. Navajo is kind of like a derogatory term, but they still use that term. But they're Dinè. That's what they like to be called. So, anyways, like in the north part, they might be painted yellow. In the south part, they might be have red face paint, and so forth, so on, wherever their location is. But one of the stories that stand out to me was this railroad conductor who drives the trains was passing through Navajo country, and he seen a whole herd of them, a whole herd of horsemen running. And it freaked him out so bad that he wouldn't go back on that route through the Navajo lands, the Dinè people's area. He wouldn't go back through that route. He just refused to do it anymore. And so, I mean, they've even seen him. The non-native people have seen him there, and you know that always makes me wonder, like, why is it that on the res more of these things happen than off the res? This is all native land. This whole continent is. Why does it only happen in our areas? Is it because we're more aware of them? And it could be happening everywhere else, but they're basically invisible because nobody's open to them. I have no idea why that is. But
Do you think it might be because the land hasn't been kind of tampered with and disrespected? Like it's managed to kind of hold its natural quality in a way that many other places haven't. Like, for instance, the guy that saw that tree being, that was in a tiny, tiny portion of ancient woodland. It was the only part of woodland that had survived in an area that had been much bigger at one stage. So I think it's interesting that it was in that area that the essence of the place, the essence of the landscape has been able to remain.
you know, it could be. But spirits, they never pass away. They're forever. There's really old ones. I mean, it could be. I mean, what I'm saying is, even if you took all that away, they'd still be there. But as far as us seeing them, uh, I don't know about that. That's where I question because a lot of people in my tribe have seen spirits and they realize that they're real and it's just a normal part of our lives. But other people will swear up and down that we're all nuts, that we're all crazy. And so I think some of that has to do with it. Doubt. They say doubt severs that spiritual link.
Mm.
So if I was to put my finger on it, why there's more things that happen on the res is because our doubt's not there. We don't have doubt when it comes to these things, whereas a lot of other uh, folks do, whatever their nationality, their religion, or whatever makes them doubt these things. So maybe I don't know. It's fun to think about. But that's kind of where I lean with that.
Yeah, yeah, love it. Yeah, well, thank you very much, Rod. I really appreciate your time. I love hearing these stories. It's just exactly what we all need, I think, at this time of year, don't we? Just to sit together and tell stories. We're going to be doing that actually in our group next week, just gathering together and telling ghost stories. So that's quite a traditional thing to do here. So looking forward to that. I hope you have a lovely, restful time over what we refer to as Yuletide. What will you be doing?
Go visit family. That's about it.
Yeah.
Nothing too exciting.
If people kind of want to contact you,
You could send me an email at lodgetales@gmail.com or anywhere the videos are up. You can leave a comment, and I usually get through most comments. It's not like I have a ton in there, so it's just a matter of going through Spotify, and there's a certain way you get into that so you can actually reply to the comments. And
yeah.
then there's Patreon. I'll see the comments there too. You can direct message me there as well as leave a comment in uh, the video itself, the episode itself. Um, and then there's the website. There's a contact entry form at lodgetales.com that you could sign in and, send me a message and yeah, go from there.
That's great. Thanks, Rod. Have you got any kind of projects coming up? What are you doing at the moment?
Well, I have some guests lined up that the stories they tell, I've heard a few of them so far, and wow, is all I can say. It's like wow. Here, just a quick preview why I'm excited. One of I could call him a friend now. I know him that well. He's a Pawnee. He comes from the Pawnee people, and there is a story where they were being chased by little people that were riding deer, and they were chasing them. So that that's just one of many that this guy's told. He's had a whole life of experiences, and he's willing to share, and he's coming on the podcast soon. Another one is these cousins, these two ladies from the Dinè area down there. They're part of that tribe. Don't know their clans or anything, but they're gonna come on, and one of them has an interesting story where at her husband's workplace she would go and drop off like lunch or something, and he'd be carrying in supplies, whatever, and this man would help her carry him so far and do whatever. She had a lot of interaction with this man. Come to find out, that man used to work there when he was alive. But he's, when he helped, they've seen him. She's talked to him. So does her husband, and they didn't even know. They didn't even realize it wasn't real. He wasn't a physical, so a couple of guests that have some really, really good stories. And what I've been doing is going on TikTok. There's a whole community over there, native community, where we just all tell stories, and there's several different places that we do it at and that we'll gather. And natives are really considerate toward others when it comes to things like this. Like, they'll alternate their live storytelling sessions around each other, so they're not all going live at once, and the people get to just jump from one to one if they want, depending on the day of the week, or sometimes even like one of them will go early and like, oh, wait a minute, Sean's going on next, so we'll end before his starts, kind of thing. So you can go there and just type in native ghost stories or whatever and search for any given evening. In the United States, you will find natives telling ghost stories there. And that's where I've been. I've been in that community. And the reason why is because I wanted to hear people's stories before I, approached them. And I wanted them to get to know me so that we're all comfortable telling these stories. Because a lot of us natives, we ain't. Like, it's rare that you even found me to come on and talk about this kind of stuff, because a lot of us just won't. And there goes back to that whole stories are powerful. They can harm people. Like, if stories are told on the highest level where there's medicine involved, people can be harmed. So a lot of times we don't talk about this stuff in general. We just say, you know what? Don't say anything about anything to anyone outside of the tribe. That's kind of like how a lot of it goes, because we don't want people to be harmed. We don't want people to try to mimic our ways, go out and build a sweat lodge and harm people by burning them, because they don't know what they're doing, or they don't have the rights to that. They're too much power, and they're going to hurt people. So things like that is why, like, a lot of times natives don't share. So that's what I've been doing lately, is trying to get more of an odd storytellers, more guests via TikTok, because of the huge native presence on there. Yeah.
That's so good to know. And yeah, I really respect the fact that you are coming on and sharing these stories with us. And it is a great honor for me to hear those. And every time I turn on your podcast and listen to the stories, it's when I'm at home doing things around the home. I really love to listen to them. I find them kind of like grounding in a way, and it always just feels like a real treat to hear these tales being told firsthand, and to get an insight into your life over there. And I guess in a way I'm kind of feeling nostalgic and sad about what we've lost, and particularly well, in any wherever we're from, we've basically lost a lot of our ways of being. So listening to these stories really kind of is keeping it alive for us too. So I very much appreciate you sharing that, and love to be able to hear these tales. So thanks for the heads up about that. That's really cool, Rod. Thanks again. And yeah, we'll speak next year sometime. And yeah, I just really appreciate it.
Okay, thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Thanks so much for listening and watching. If you enjoy the podcast, please consider joining us on Patreon for dozens more episodes of unreleased bonus content, monthly online events, and a private chat. We are a warm, supportive community, and it really helps to support the project. Find us on patreon.com/The Modern Fairy Sightings Podcast.